coming to get you, Barbara.
Here's some money. Go see a Star War.
But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Welcome back to Long Walk Talks. My name is David Hensley. I'm the owner and creative director of Long Walk Productions, and I am joined today by my two co-hosts, Stan Wilson Lee.
Hello.
And Chris Wilson Barnes.
Hello.
And for the first time this year so far, we are going to be doing our first off-topic episode of the year after spending the first couple of months talking about Kevin Smith and our Crisis crossover episode in which we talked about Money Plane. So for today's episode, we are going to be discussing best series finales, specifically the ending of TV shows. And while this was already on my list of potential topics, I decided we'd go ahead and do it because just 2 weeks ago, WandaVision ended. And there were a lot of controversial opinions about how well the show wrapped up its storyline and whether or not there was going to be a season 2. So since that happened, I decided now would probably be a good time to go ahead and dive into our opinions on best series finales. So, Stan, why don't you kick us off? Is yours in a list form?
It is in a list form. I do have a three-way tie for 3. So
okay.
If we want to go, if we're going in like a specific order or something.
Yeah, why don't you kick us off with your three-way tie?
And it's three-way tie for 3. I have Dark, Travelers, and Friends. Friends was the original of this, but then I remembered I watched Dark and Travelers and had a great time with both those shows. And the thing is, though, it's like I watched them after they actually played, right? And they were already established on Netflix, and they had run through their seasons already. So I was like a year, 2 years behind, at least Dark, and I think I was 3 years behind Travelers. And Dark is a German series, fantastic. Travelers, probably one of the, if not the best, one of the best time travel discussions about the paradox and everything like that of TV shows. Really loved them. But of course, one of the few shows that hurt me at the end of the run, Friends, I think, is one of the greatest culminations of a show ever. So, and the people who I wanted together ended up together. It was just beautiful, and I loved the show from beginning to end, and really enjoyed the culmination of how it
culminated.
Yeah, how they grew up.
Very nice. Chris, why don't you start us off with your number 3, or keep us going?
Okay,
rather.
well, how many were we supposed to do? Because you never actually said a number.
I don't know.
I don't know. You just tossed out the subject, and I was like,
yeah,
okay.
it occurs to me now that I never specified.
No.
But yeah, if you've got more than 3,
I mean, I've got a couple. Because I was like, I don't want to go in with just one in case.
Are yours ranked?
No.
Okay. Well, then why don't you give us a couple?
All right. Well, I mean, we all yearn for the end, but when it happens to our TV shows, it's a little bittersweet. So mine are mainly going to be animation-based or cartoon-based because animation is different, especially in the West, where it's basically, let's run it for as long as we can. It's usually just episodic. It's rare to have like an overarching plot or anything. So if anything animated gets a finale, it's just like you get a show, you get a stopping point, and then usually it'll rotate. You don't normally get a proper finale or something that stops a narrative. So I will start with the end of the original Teen Titans animated series.
Nice.
Well, it's specifically the finale movie, Trouble in Tokyo, because the end of season 5 kind of left off in a weird way, but they actually did do a proper wrap-up later. And it was nice. It was a good culmination of everything. That's a fun word we're throwing around right now, right?
Yeah, that's the theme of tonight is culmination. Okay. Well, I've got a couple of honorable mentions here.
Sure.
That I could have just called 4, 5, and 6, but I didn't. So in my honorable mentions, I've got, talking about animation, Beast Wars, the Transformers cartoon from the 90s. Mm-hmm. Thought it had a great finale, great wrap-up. Choose to believe that beast machines never happened afterwards. Then I've got Avatar, The Last Airbender, the only Avatar that matters as far as I'm concerned. And then Daredevil on Netflix. They weren't aware at the time that it was going to be their series finale, but as a series finale, it delivers.
And I haven't finished it yet, so I couldn't include any of the Marvel.
That was something I was thinking about, because I was thinking about with this thing. There's a ton of shows where it's like they get finales, and it's a big thing. And then there's plenty of shows, some classic shows, who it just ended and they never realized. Like I think one of the most infamous examples is the cast of Lost in Space found out they were canceled in the newspaper.
Wow.
In the Wonder Years, they apparently had done an episode and they didn't realize it was their finale until they heard Daniel Stern's narration wrapping everything up.
Wow. Well, Katie and I were just talking about this not too long ago because we finished watching the 3rd season of Glow, which ends on a couple of massive cliffhangers that it's very upsetting to discover, since it got canceled. None of those cliffhangers will ever get resolved.
I'm still angry about My Name is Earl.
Yeah. So I'm hoping somebody out there will pick up Glow, or we'll get some kind of finale in some form or another. But my actual number 3rd slot is a very controversial opinion. I'm going with Lost. Given my love for the show, it had to be in there somewhere. And unlike a lot of people, I loved the way the show wrapped up. Yeah, it's got problems. Yeah, the show was never going to solve all of the mysteries that it presented, but it wrapped up well. I appreciated the finale, and I was happy with it. So yeah. Stan, what have you got for number 2?
This is probably a given, knowing me, but my second show that I never wanted to end, but it had to, and there were 2 terms, so it's like West Wing is my, and the fact that Jimmy Smits won a 3rd term for the Progressive Party, that always helped me out and said, okay, great, at least he gets to win. And it's Jimmy Smits, so Jimmy Smits as your president is almost as good as Martin Sheen as your president. So I was great. I was really happy with the ending of West Wing, and a great show with a great ending. So it's good.
Nice. This is going to be the quickest episode we've ever done. Chris, what have you got next?
So are we at Teeny Talks now?
I mean, we might as well be.
So my number 2 is one of your honorable mentions. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender. Especially because they embraced the idea that even if it was like 3 seasons long, they actually had a concrete start and finish. Mm-hmm. They had I think there needs to be more of that, and I think there is now, because of the way, cable and streaming is fracturing things, that people are actually investing in that way in animated series where they're doing. I just like that more in general, where there's an absolute narrative where that will start and finish, and it told its story and it told it well and it finished.
Very nice. All right, so for my number 2, I'm going with Community, across all of its various platforms that it ended up on. Actually, I think it's just the one. It was NBC, and then it was Yahoo. When the 6th and final season aired specifically to Yahoo, it seems very strange now to think that at the time, Yahoo wasn't its own streaming station. You had to watch it on your computer or your laptop like a monster instead of streaming it to your TV. Despite the fact that just 10 years ago, that was, watching things on your laptop or your computer was perfectly normal. And I'm sure still a lot of people do it, but being able to actually stream it to your TV, that was a game changer. So when it finally hit Netflix and I got to watch the whole series straight through, Katie was there with me when I finished the last episode. And having only seen bits and pieces of it, she didn't understand like why I was so upset and why I was crying during the last 10 minutes of the show until probably about a year later when she watched the whole show beginning to end and then texted me when she got to the finale how upset she was over it. It was the perfect way to end the show, and I'm so glad that Dan Harmon got to put a definitive end on it after it got canceled twice. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I was just very pleased that we got to see some finality from it and that it paid off the way that it did. So we're right here at number 1. Like I said, this is going to be the quickest episode we've ever done. Our listeners are
now
probably
I have to
cheering
decide if I
right
want to
now.
talk about MASH or not.
So what's your number 1?
My number 1 would be the final MASH.
The final finale.
And from 83, which I don't think I watched actually in 83. It took me through syndication, and because I was only a sophomore, junior or something in 83.
I know I didn't watch it because I was born that year.
And my folks didn't really watch MASH when it first came out because my dad thought it was anti-military and stuff like that, and he wasn't sure about it. But they watched it later on when they moved down here, and they just discovered it in syndication, and my mom ended up loving it a lot.
It was definitely anti-war. I don't think it was ever anti-military.
Yeah, and but he was concerned that it might be too much anti-military, and then he found out that it was basically a comment on the Vietnam War and not the Korean War. And then he had watched the original film version of it previously in some incarnation, and really enjoyed the film version of it. And then so I think he finally sat, and when it would play, I don't think he purposely ever went to it. But when it was playing, he would sit down and watch an episode or whatever. And but anyway, he ended up liking it. And I think I didn't see the actual Goodbye Farewell episode and it was actually done as a film version. It counted itself as the last 5 episodes of the series because it was a 2.5-hour movie. And I didn't see it until I was at least in college, and probably the first time, and probably even after that. So, I was far between actual airing first time and actually seeing it. And I'd seen so many episodes in syndication. I don't think I've seen all of MASH straight through, and it was 11 seasons worth. And I'm sure there's episodes that I've missed, but since it's available now in Netflix or Prime or whatever, it's much easier, and I've seen a few straight seasons through. But yeah, the final episode of MASH it's actually TV history,
right?
And it's brilliant.
Now,
is it still the most watched? Or something broken it?
As TV show, yes.
As the most
Super
watched?
Bowl. A Super Bowl,
Well, I know the finale was like the most watched. Is it still?
The finale
Probably,
is the most watched TV show.
Yeah, and then probably adjusted for the time period to now. Yeah. Now, with somebody who only has a passing knowledge of MASH, but a pretty strong basis in pop culture, isn't the MASH finale like one of the most depressing episodes of all time?
I mean, it's not. I can't say that. I was going to say it's not depressing, and it's because.
So it is depressing.
Well, I'm saying because it's funny as well. But the thing is that
it ends on a very dark note. Right?
It ends on a great note, but the 2 hours 40 minutes leading up to the end, it's like Hawkeye doesn't think BJ is saying goodbye to him when BJ is about to leave. Hawkeye, the first half of the movie or first quarter of the movie, is in a psychiatrist's chair. Basically, he's going through his PTSD stuff right before he's discharged, and so he has to deal with all this stuff about not being able to operate on a child because shit's happened, and he sees he witnesses something on a bus during an attack and he's telling a mother to quiet that chicken, and we find out that the chicken is just his replacement in his memories, that it's actually her baby. And so he has all this stuff to deal with. And Alan Alda, who plays Hawkeye, of course, actually directed this episode. And this was MASH was what we end up. That's where we discovered Alan Alda pretty much. And he turned. And speaking of West Wing, he was the Republican candidate for the presidency that Jimmy Smits beat. So the culmination there is great. But yeah.
So it is a depressing ending.
Well,
we went a long way for that.
Well, when Hawkeye leave, BJ's actually called back his leave, or his discharge is rescinded, and Hawkeye is leaving on his discharge and gets in the helicopter, and as he's pulling away, BJ's yelling, I didn't forget to say goodbye this time. And as the helicopter's pulling away, one of the last images of the show is BJ has put out this, basically a rock garden that says goodbye to Hawkeye, and the show ends on this giant smile from Hawkeye. And so the idea that there is a future for all of them is there.
So Chris, I know you probably have several, right? Or do you have just a number one?
I have a number one. I mean, my favorite is my favorite.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'm gonna before I say my favorite, I know Dave is gonna ask a question after I tell you what my favorite is, and it's the question that everyone should ask, which is my favorite finale is Futurama.
Which finale?
All of them.
All of them.
The season 4 finale, the Comedy Central movies finale, or the actual finale?
Yeah, because Futurama, something I love about them, which you hear if you ever get the series on DVD, which you should. Every episode has commentary, and they talk about making it, and it's a great. I used to fall asleep listening to the commentaries. They were so much fun to listen to, and
except for Jurassic Park.
I don't know that.
I think
so. We won't talk about it because it's going to be triggering for at least 2 people in this room, and probably every listener who's ever watched it. If you want to be the saddest you will probably ever be in your life, when you go home tonight, Google the Jurassic Bark episode of Futurama.
It is a great episode. It is a hard episode to watch.
Most people have only ever watched it once.
I have managed to watch it 3 times. And the second time, I don't want to go into it. Maybe if we do like a saddest episode thing. I have a story attached to watching it one time that is just extra triple sad.
Heart-wrenching.
It is 100%. Now they did a good job of not exactly retconning it, but
right.
They did a good job of following up and being like giving people something to still laugh about regarding that. But the Futurama people, they were always kind of prescient about how long this was going to last. So I think after season 4 was coming to a close, they wrote a finale where it's like, if we don't get picked up, this is a good stopping point. It's the devil's hands are idle playthings, where Fry trades his hands with the robot devils in order to have the skill to play a futuristic instrument called the holophoner. And it's very funny, and it ends on a very sweet note. And then years later, they found out they were being revived via 4 direct-to-DVD movies. And they were like... And people were hopeful. It's like, oh, they do these and they might get the series back. But they were like, we might not. So they wrote an ending to the last movie that was like, if it was up in the air. And then they did get the series back, and they ran for, I think, another 3 seasons? 5, 6,
2 or 3?
4. Because they had seasons 5 through 8.
Yeah, so 3 more seasons, because the way that Comedy Central breaks it up, they split all 4 of the movies into 4 episodes each.
Yes.
So they air those 16 episodes as season 5.
Right. Okay.
And then after that, it got a season 6, 7, and 8.
And then at the end of 8, the basic synopsis is because of I think it's like an invention of the professors that Fry messes with, it causes this weird temporal loop that keeps, I think it's like it keeps heightening to the point where they get like they get stuck out of time. Everything's frozen, and then so Fry and Leela spend decades together on this frozen time Earth, and they spend the rest of their lives together. And then the professor shows up and says he might have found a way to reverse it, but once they go through, they might have to loop around and live everything all over again. And they agree to do it, and then so they jump into the loop, and essentially the entire series is a stable time loop according to the end of the show. And the night it aired, Comedy Central did the most genius thing possible, where after I think Fry says, "Want to go around one more time?" and they go, "Always," and they jump through, and the next thing that played on Comedy Central was the pilot episode. And even talking about it right now, it's just genius planning on everybody.
Yeah.
It's like it's hard to top both the genius of the writing in that show, their timing, their comedic wit, and on top of that, how they ended it every time.
Mm-hmm. Nice. All right. Well, we'll wrap things up real quick right here. For my number one series finale of all time, I gotta go with Justified, which is a show you still haven't finished, right, Stan?
I'm in 6.
Perfect.
One of the last ending. One of the last couple seasons.
Okay, there were 6 total.
Okay, so I'm maybe in.
Knowing what I know,
5 and 6, I still have left, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I won't go too much into it for you, Stan. But if you know, like going out on 4 words that really sum up the entire show and call back to the very first episode, we dug coal together. It was just the perfect note to end that show on. And in as few spoilers as possible, actually, I think I can get through it without any. The finale of Justified rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and it did me as well to an extent, because the finale works on 2 different levels. The first 25 minutes of the show functions as the finale to season 6. It wraps up the plots that made up the entirety of season 6. The last 20 to 25 minutes wrap up the show as a whole, which, some people wanted to see more of that, wrapping up the plot of the show. Some people wanted to see a longer wrap up of that season, because realistically, 12 episodes worth of plot in season 6 are, what's the word that you just kept using?
Culmination?
Yeah.
Culmination?
Yeah, they culminate in about 20 minutes, which left a lot of people upset. And it wasn't until, I think it was the AV Club that posted a review that said, you have to look at it as the first 25 minutes, that's the end of the season. The last 25, that's the end of the series. And when you break it down that way, it functions as one of the best finales of all time.
And also,
I agree.
You just have to think about it like it's also the fact that you just emotionally don't want to let go of the show. You don't want to admit like this is the end.
What is the snake handling season? The snake season.
I thought he was going to stop at what?
What is
the snake
hard
season?
pause? The snake season is...
I may be done. I don't know.
The snake season is 4 or 5.
Okay,
I can't remember.
So when they go off together.
Have you gotten to Sam Elliott yet?
No.
Okay, then you haven't gotten to the last season.
That's the last. Okay. I'm at the point where Boyd and what's her face are going out, but basically Boyd and Timothy Oliphant, Raylan are basically teaming up to finish off what needs to be finished off. So I'm like at that end of that season. That might be season 5. I don't know. So I might be almost done.
I can't remember now, mostly because like as much as I love the show as a whole, each season is so much defined by who the overarching villain is. And it was so hard for them to top Mags Bennett in season 2 and Robert Quarles in season 3. I could not tell you who the villains of season 4 or 5 are off the top of my head anymore. I'm pretty sure season 5 is the Crow brothers. And
Yes.
season 4 was the suitcase full of cocaine season. I think that's right.
Was that what that girl was talking about today when she came and looked for the suitcase?
Not that suitcase. So that's our season finale talk. Now,
Wow.
So we kind of touched on it earlier. Were there any that really just super disappointed you?
yeah, see, that was going to be my next question is, can you think of any worst series finales? Chris, what about you? Did you have something in mind?
No, not really. Because I'm trying to think. Because honestly, I mean, I think my go-to for any worst series finale is when they think they're getting another season.
Yeah, it's hard to judge that because that's not really them dropping the ball.
That's having
the ball dropped.
That was
for
like
them.
because like usually when that happens, they're told up and down, oh, you're getting another season. It's fine. Go ahead. And so they go like, okay, we'll drop in a cliffhanger and take care of it next season. And then it's like, nope, gone forever.
Well, I feel like the obvious one that I have to go with is Game of Thrones.
I kind of figured.
I mean, when season 8 was airing, I watched it week to week, and I was a lot more forgiving because it was Game of Thrones, and Weiss and Benioff had said people aren't going to be happy, and so I just kind of took the finale for what it was. It was a little bit of a letdown at the time. Going back and then rewatching the entirety of season 8, though, it really hammered home just how bad it actually was.
I have two things about that. One, I never really got into Game of Thrones, but I would hang out with you guys, especially when you were watching season 8, and watch you guys basically watch it and watch you guys watch it, and that was a sight to behold. And the other thing is, a podcast I listened to brought up something interesting. We're how far removed from season 8 and its ending, and who still talks about Game of Thrones now?
Right.
It's like
It was a cultural phenomenon that just stopped when the show stopped.
Well, and then when it ended like it did, it's just very much like write it off.
This is funny. Just to give you, how much opinions can differ. I just decided to Google real quick worst series finales.
Yeah.
After earlier today Googling best, just
Sure.
to see, I'm certain that I'm forgetting something. I have seen The Sopranos, Lost, and Seinfeld all end up on best series finales list and worst.
That really depends on who you talk to. It's like the especially as I know the Sopranos one is like you go in to see a finale and you get a cutoff, and it's like I get what they're going for. It's been explained, and I get it. I see what you're going for, but I also see why people would have liked something.
I liked it, and I liked Seinfeld's ending. What was the third one?
Lost.
And you know my not that I hated because I didn't watch enough of Lost to, but I was just, oh wow, this is going to be the ending. But I like both Sopranos and Seinfeld probably not as much as I like Sopranos, but I found it kind of subversive. So in that sense,
it was a little bit ahead of its time in that regard.
You know what always got me about Seinfeld is I think what I don't like. The show kind of irks me in general because there's this feeling that you're supposed to somehow. They're not good people, and that's clear. And then it's like also you're supposed to sympathize with them for some reason. Whereas in a show like It's Always Sunny, it's like it's made very clear. No, you should not be rooting for these people. It's okay to be happy when they fail.
Right. Yeah, and that's part of the charm of the show is that they're all terrible, but it doesn't try to make you sympathize with them.
No.
And then I never got past season 5 of Dexter. I gave up, but I think
I think a lot of people just hate watch to the end of that one because I heard about that.
It's pretty universally agreed on by people who actually finished the show, and God bless you for it because I couldn't. That the final season of Dexter was just awful.
That's a sunk cost fallacy right there.
Yeah.
Another season is coming though.
Apparently
he's going to.
Oh, and apparently
repair that.
Raylan Givens might be showing back up again. There's another Elmore Leonard
novel.
Something being adapted into a show, and it may end up with.
Oh, if they bring back Oliphant, I'm 100% on board.
Yeah, they're apparently the rumor is he may cameo as Givens.
Well, I mean, honestly, they could name the character something else, but that's just the role that Timothy Oliphant plays now.
Yeah, agreed.
That was basically his role on Deadwood. He codified it in Justified, and then he cameos on the second season of The Mandalorian as Raylan Givens in space.
Exactly. I mean, even his Santa Clarita with Drew Barrymore is kind of, if Raylan Givens was married to a cannibal, but he's a little bit more funny, That's it.
So let's talk about weirdest of all time. Okay. Have either of you seen the series finale of Roseanne?
Oh, yes. No, because that was the lottery season.
Yeah.
That was the, oh, God. Roseanne writing her own fan fiction about her life.
Basically,
is what it was. Yeah.
Like, what a weird fucking way to wrap up your show. You do this last season that's just filled with wacky, off-the-wall hijinks. After, following this up on several seasons, I don't know exactly how long the show went, but it was very real, down-to-earth, situational dramedy.
It was like 7 or 8. It ran for a long while.
Yeah, and then to go into this final season, just balls to the wall, here's all the crazy things that are happening to the Connors.
And she killed Dan, right?
Yeah.
Well, she didn't kill Dan.
But
her fantasy,
fantasy.
Turns out the fantasy was Dan was still alive. He died of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then they retcon that.
Yeah, and then they reboot the show, retcon that, make it a season, then kind of retcon Roseanne out of existence.
Roseanne.
Because Roseanne wouldn't shut up. So it's like, you know what? You know who's dead now? Roseanne's dead now.
Yeah. But I remember, now I didn't watch Roseanne live when it was airing, but I remember it was something that I would just watch in the afternoons during high school. Because for some reason, like, just how like dark and emotional that show could get at times, but also how funny. For some reason, it just really drew me in. But then to get to that finale, and it's like, no, none of that shit happened this season. Dan's been dead the entire time. And by the way, Roseanne was lying to you about several things you thought you knew.
Yeah.
Like, what a weird fucking ending, and what a weird middle finger to the audience. And also John Goodman.
Yeah.
Stan, did you have any disappointments that you thought of?
I would say stuff like, because I'm old, but stuff like Happy Days and stuff like that. The endings of like Mork and Mindy.
The show that launched 1,000 franchises?
But the thing with Happy Days is that, the whole jump the shark, is from there, and the idea that once Ron Howard and Richie Cunningham leave the show, that should probably where it should have ended. But the fact that they bring in everybody for that final episode where Joni and Chachi are getting married, and so everybody comes back, Lori Beth comes back, and all the people that you loved, they were able to actually end fairly positively, and you had Henry Winkler and Ron Howard together, which is one of the best duos in TV of all time. So it's like, it was really nice to see. And again, I was super young at this time, it's like, so seeing that, but Happy Days was always a show that I had to watch on Tuesday nights, right? It's like, I'm 12 years old or whatever, but it's Happy Days night, and it would have to be Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and I was there the whole time. And so once they did the Hawaii episode and Fonzie jumped the shark, and Ron Howard decided to leave, and Lori Beth was gone, and it became the show about Potsy and Fonzie, and Fonzie became a teacher at the high school that they always raged about, but I still watched it, but there was definitely a missing heart to it, because Richie Cunningham was the heart of Happy Days. And but so I was disappointed for a little bit, but then the final half hour of that last episode, it's like everybody's together and you got that feeling back. And so yeah, that's probably the worst ending for me, but I still left positive.
Yeah. Chris, what were you going to say?
Oh, only my worst ending is just news radio, and that's just because I was sad it was ending. That's it. It was still a good show. people complained about season 5, but they were really complaining about Phil Hartman passing away and not being there, because season 5 was no different than the previous seasons in terms of quality and shenanigans. I loved it.
I loved it too.
Yeah,
I loved it too.
And I was gonna say, Richie Cunningham was the heart of Happy Days, unlike his brother Chuck, who went upstairs during season 1 and was never seen again.
And they changed the house. There was no more stairs.
They walled him up into the attic.
On the other side. They built an attic on the garage so Fonzie could live in it. It was awesome.
It's like the Simpsons house. It was whatever dimensions it needed to be for the show.
Exactly.
All right. Well, if you've got any thoughts about best or worst series finales that you'd like to share, you can email those to me and we'll talk about them on the next episode, david.longwalk@gmail.com, or you can comment on the Facebook page when we post this episode. Next week, we'll be continuing our Kevin Smith discussion when we talk about Chasing Amy. And next week is going to be a double feature episode because we've got another WWE pay-per-view coming up on Sunday.
It'll be a heaping helping dosa. Who cares? At Fastlane.
Yep.
Wow.
A pay-per-view I might not be able to make it to, so I may have even less to say than usual.
Yeah. I'm sorry, that sounded mean, but it's just they're putting on a pay-per-view less than 2 weeks from WrestleMania.
Oh, they are doing WrestleMania.
This season. And they're doing 2 nights of WrestleMania again. So
again. So be on the lookout for those 2 episodes, and then I know that we've got a NXT Takeover pay-per-view coming up in a few weeks in April, so you can be on the lookout for another This Is a Takeover, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, another episode of Long Walk Teeny Talks.
Can I say something?
No.
If you are able, but haven't and have been debating whether or not to see it, watch WandaVision. It's a great continuation of the MC universe, and it's really well done. And we were talking about TV finales. It's very much done in classic sitcoms and stuff like that. So the idea of how it's done is very relevant to what we discussed today. And so I was sad it was over.
Well, I don't think there are many people listening to this show. I don't think there are many MCU fans who don't also have Disney Plus who haven't watched it yet at this point. I'd be surprised if there's anyone out there like, man, I just don't know.
But in case, that person in Sweden or whatever that likes to listen to us might not have got it yet.
Our one Swedish listener. Stan, you're still social media distancing, correct?
Yeah.
Chris, if people want to reach out to you online or follow you online, where can they do that at?
They clearly do not, but they can find me on Twitter at Chris the OK.
Nice. And if you want to follow me personally, you can do that on Instagram at DB Hensley. So if you want to follow us online, you can do that on our Facebook pages, either Long Walk Productions or Long Walk Podcasts. To find out more about the company, you can go to our website, longwalk.us. If you'd like to see more of our original works, you can do that on our YouTube channel, and you can also listen to the backlog of episodes on our YouTube channel. Both of those links are in the show notes. And as always, if you enjoy this show or any of our sister shows, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review on whatever platform you are listening on.
Peace.